Hi, Katrina. Love us. You're looking so glam.
We're matching.
Man.
Look at that.
Well, thanks for joining, Pookie.
My pleasure, my love.
Just so everyone knows, we're going to get the formalities out of the way. Changemakers is a little series I'm doing on IG and YouTube, profiling some social entrepreneurs, creatives, and thought leaders who are really helping the world pivot towards a more sustainable, conscious approach to doing business and really promoting the idea of conscious capitalism, because we can't just rely on charities to save the planet. We need to change business from the inside out. And I was thinking about who to get on next, because we've had a few pretty high profile people on already. And I was thinking, wait a second, my girlfriend is an amazing venture catalyst, and also now a yogi-preneur. So without further ado, Katrina Razon, everyone. Woo!
Hi.
Katrina is also my girlfriend, as some of you may know. And about her extensive bio quickly. She's a DJ and CEO of KSR Ventures. She's also the producer of Wonder Fruit Festival and creative director of CC Concepts, and now a yoga instructor. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. She's an investor with a focus on key inflection points of outstanding net positive companies that aim to solve economic, social, and environmental problems in inspiring ways. Enabling entrepreneurs to create a better tomorrow is the very crux of her investment philosophy, which is amazing. And she's really, forging a path as an investor in Asia, where it's not as common to do this kind of stuff. Hey, Enzo, brother Enzo.
Hi, Enz. He's just upstairs.
So I'm here in, everyone thinks you're looking stunning, which you are. I'm here in Hong Kong, is joining from Manila. So yeah, we're going to start off. Well, thanks for joining, Kat, Pookie.
My pleasure. What an honor to be interviewed by Lee-Davies.
Well, hey, you're doing really well. Now, some of you may have seen that we just released our video documentary on our climb up Kilimanjaro earlier in February this year, just before the pandemic hit, which is a good segue into our conversation about what we're going to talk about. So, Katrina, what was your experience like? Because I know you had a few problems getting up the mountain, but what was your overall experience like climbing Kilimanjaro?
It was my first big climb. So I really did not know what to expect. I certainly did not expect that much of rain in this hike. So the rain really did freak me out a little bit. But what I also didn't expect was to be humbled in that way. I mean, when you're on Kilimanjaro, Africa's tallest mountain, you feel so small and so tiny. And it just kind of reminds you that sometimes when we get stuck in our bubbles, that we forget about what's really out there in the world. And Kilimanjaro is this magnificent mountain with its own weather system, for goodness sake. And I was truly humbled by it, because I learned that going slow is the best way to, it's not a race, but let's just say slow and steady wins the race, right? And by going at one step at a time, it forces you not to be too fixated on the summit, because what it is, it's a journey, not a destination. It's similar with yoga, for example. We're always so fixated on the yoga asana, the poses, getting into a pose, getting into a shape, when yoga is a feeling. It's not a shape. It's a journey with no destination.
Right. I will come back to the yoga in a bit, because that's really quite important in your developing journey as a social entrepreneur. What was your most memorable moment from the climb? I mean, there were many, but what do you think was the sort of standout moment for you?
I love the Barranca Wall, which was the scramble and this vertical climb. And it was the only day where it didn't rain on the 8-day trek. And it was just so wonderful to see all the climbers happy and feeling motivated under the sunshine. And we really got to see the mountain in all of its glory, because there's like 5 different climate zones on Kilimanjaro, unlike a lot of the mountains, or the tallest peaks around the world, if you will. And it's crazy to see like desert plants at that altitude. It was so stunning and so beautiful. And I could climb that wall again tomorrow if I had to. I would certainly hope not to get altitude sickness on the summit night.
Yeah, because that was a really big challenge for you. And I know there are a few of the climbers watching now, but I mean, was there a point that you didn't think you were going to make it? Because there were certainly points where I didn't think you were going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, to be honest, it was really freaky, because I did not expect to have that kind of reaction, because I was feeling relatively fine. But I guess the combination of the Diamox and not compensating by drinking more than enough water really got to me at that altitude, at base camp, essentially. And I really, really was, I will spare everyone from the grisly details, but it was really tough. Something like that has never happened to me before. But I kept thinking about, you know, we made it all the way out here. And we were doing it for a cause, which was to raise funds for wildlife conservation in Southeast Asia and in Africa. And a lot of kind donors had donated to the campaign and showed their support. And I honestly was only motivated by, you know, the other climbers like you, and by the donors as well.
Yeah, you don't want those donors being disappointed. It just as a reminder,
Yeah.
Katrina was actually one of the biggest fundraisers on the trip. But if you'd like to donate, please go to projectcseachange.com and you can find the donation links there to the relevant charity. Nice plug. Boom. But yeah, no, it was really amazing. But I think the main point to remember, of course, apart from the actual climb, is that during COVID, we've actually seen an explosion in poaching, contrary to what people would think, because most of the conservation is funded by tourism dollars. So when the tourism stops, the conservancies haven't got the funds to pay rangers and to pay for the anti-poaching activities. So it's very important that people kind of support the conservancies out there in Africa, especially at this critical time. So please have a look at our website and see how you can support there. So just moving on from Kilimanjaro, let's talk a little bit about your investment strategy, because obviously you're a female entrepreneur, you're an extremely young investor, and your whole portfolio is based around these sort of net positive companies. How do you distinguish which companies do the good work and which companies are, say, greenwashing?
Net positive, for the listeners who aren't familiar with the term, means that you are giving more back to the earth, to its people, than you are taking away from it. And how I distinguish a net positive company from a company that is clearly greenwashing is you have to look into the values of that company first. Are the values aligned from the board of directors all the way down to every single stakeholder involved in that company or organization? And there are a lot of greenwashing out there. An example of greenwashing would be a brand like H&M rolling out conscious fashion line, when we know that H&M is notorious for exploiting their workers and polluting the natural environment. So it requires a lot of due diligence, for instance, because it's a new space. If you think about it, it's a brand new space, because the idea of climate change, climate volatility wasn't in the collective consciousness, let's say 20 years ago. So it's a brand new space and everyone is trying to figure it out. And it's okay for everyone to try to figure it out. But when the big corporations are trying to take advantage and trying to make themselves look good through greenwashing, because there is a shift in what people want in their lives and what people want to associate themselves with, from brands to, and brands are very personal. Like, people will really support the brands that speak most to them. And this is happening in the food industry as well. This is happening in fashion. This is happening across all industries. And people are demanding for transparency, and people are demanding for accountability, because what we're seeing now is that there are children all over the world that are fighting for their futures. And it breaks my heart that our leaders are incapable of leading, that children have to fight for their own future, because we are the first generation to know how our actions directly affect the planet, and how these corporations are degrading the forests, the seas, all of our last remaining wild places out there. And I think that in order to affect and to change the collective consciousness, you need to go into the businesses themselves and demand that they align themselves with sustainable development goals, for instance. How are they practicing regenerative culture in their work? Are they treating their supply chain right and ethically, for instance? Because people, the health of people is very interconnected with the health of our planet, right?
So, I mean, there's two things there. Is it bad that big companies are now trying to, say, be more sustainable? Or is it what you're saying is that they're not doing it in an authentic way?
I think that the big companies are the perpetrators for giving out and for illustrating this narrative that, look, if you're not recycling, this is your fault. You have to recycle. But as we've come to learn, recycling is very costly. It's unrealistic. And it's coming from these big companies like the Coca-Colas, for instance. Why is it that like a bottle of Coca-Cola is cheaper than their bottle of smart water? It's all connected in that sense. And they always try to give this narrative that it's the individual's fault. It's individual action that's going to get us out of this mess. Where in fact, there are 100 companies that are responsible for 70% of global emissions.
Yeah, it's a shocking fact. And there's a lot of research now showing how the companies like BP pushed on these terms like carbon footprint to shift the discussion away from the corporate giants onto individual action, where actually there's only so much the individual can do. The system itself has to be changed, and these are state-sponsored, subsidized systems. So it's very much about financing, green financing, if you like, of changing finance so that their finance only supports green initiatives or companies that adhere to these principles. We also talk about, the term climate change was brought in by, these big corporations instead, away from climate warming, which is really what's happening. So, some big problems there. Why don't you talk a little bit quickly? And by the way, before we carry on, don't forget this is an interactive session. So if you have any questions, instead of me asking the questions all the time, please write them, and I'll do my best to put them to Katrina. But going back to, okay, so how, as an investor, can you actually make money out of this kind of strategy? And secondly, just quickly outline the three, we want to being great and compassionate boss. There you go. Well done, Daddy.
Pass on the message. Thank you.
Booing.
Hi, Steph.
There's Steph. So maybe first, actually, why don't you just outline three companies from your portfolio and talk a little bit about them, because we haven't got a huge amount of time.
So one really amazing company that I've backed is a company called Dear Francis. And Dear Francis aims to slow down the fashion cycle. And inarguably, the fashion industry is one of the biggest polluters, second to the oil industry, of the natural planet. And what Dear Francis aims to do is slow down the fashion cycle, only bring out permanent collections and things that aren't driven by trends, if you will. Because the issue is that why do we need to keep buying and buying more things? Why can't we just have and invest in pieces that we will keep for a lifetime? And the pieces that come out of Dear Francis are made to last a lifetime. And for every shoe that's purchased, the company donates shoes to children in need in areas in Africa.
Great. A good comment there from Paulie Mons. A great talk about the subject is Enlightened Capitalism by Fernando Zobel de Ayala. So,
yeah.
And you also, hi Payal, and you also have invested in a water company as well.
Yes. The company is called Next Level Water. And basically what I try to focus on, because you can't address climate volatility and environmental issues without creating some sort of economic inclusion and inclusion in general for the poor in developing countries and developing nations. And Jane Goodall once said that you cannot have a healthier planet if you're not going to help the poor, because they can't be out of this equation. They're completely out of society, and it's terrible. And what Next Level Water does is they've created a micro desal system that does not negatively affect the environment, but it puts the water through this reverse osmosis, providing clean water way below market value to coastal communities in the Philippines that are undergoing a water crisis. Because a lot of people don't realize that there are certain communities in the Philippines that have been in a water crisis since 2014. And this issue is only going to worsen as climate change, climate volatility worsens in the next few years.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, like, especially with a lot of the conservation work that we do, there is no conservation without community. You have to.
Exactly.
In order for conservation initiatives to work. There's no point just saying, we're going to protect the animals, protect the forests, if the people around those forests and animals are living in poverty. It just doesn't work. So you have to look after.
Yeah. Or unless you incentivize them. And, I know a lot of communities that live around mangroves in this country, and there are a lot of construction companies and mining companies that want to destroy the mangroves to build like highways or just destroy them. And I mean, we were together in Surigao when we asked Marlo if he realized, if he understood the importance of mangroves, and he couldn't even answer. So It really is about educating communities, and a good example too. And the reason why a lot of dynamite, it still happens in the Philippines, but part of the reason why there was a big decline on dynamite fishing is because people educated the fishermen and said, look, if you destroy the coral reefs, then you have no livelihoods for your future. You won't be able to feed your families. And in the Philippines, people don't dream about the future. They don't dream about goals. What they're thinking about is, how am I going to feed my family for dinner, for lunch? They literally think from meal to meal because there's no other choice. And we have to find a way to empower these communities so that these communities have a reason to protect these wild places, because in the end, they all work from each other. It's all interconnected.
Yeah, you make a good point about the mangroves there, because 800,000 hectares of mangroves are lost every year. And within the next century, they'll disappear. And the mangroves are incredible buffers against extreme weather, and also soak up 10% of the carbon. So very important to keep those mangroves. Plus, they're also beautiful places to go and explore. Now, you touch a good point there about lack of leadership, like bad leadership in the world right now. Like, turn on the news every day and say, oh my God, who is actually leading? And if you look at the COVID stats, the best performing countries in terms of preventing COVID, I think the top 5 are run by women. So what do you think? What do you have to say about female leadership? And do you think, one, that we will have more female leaders, and 2, are women actually better leaders than men? Are you willing to put your reputation on this, Poops?
Well, so, I mean, why RBG was so amazing is that she fought for women because women need to be in the places where the decisions are made. And the only way we're going to see more gender equality in the world is we need to elect more leaders who are women, because diversity literally leads to innovation. And what we've seen around the world is that leadership has greatly failed in leading the response to COVID. America had ample time to prepare for this virus, and what's happened. You know, it's amazing how the countries with leaders who are women were fast and acted quickly in their responses, and they isolated cases, they traced aggressively. And it's something that the whole world needs to take note of, because when you elect more women who are leaders, you lead a more inclusive society for all.
Absolutely. And I hope we do have more women making big key decisions. And let's see what's going to happen in the US
I hope so too.
But now let's talk about COVID. Obviously, we're in a very different world to where we were last year. And in a way, COVID presents, it's a very tragic human tragedy, and it's very tragic for many people across the world. But it does present a new opportunity to reframe the way that we live and interact with nature. And by the way, I just had a comment from Fidesz. Hi, Katrina. Just wanted to let you know that you're a huge inspiration to me as a woman in VC, a male-dominated space, and impact investor at that. Love our ecosystem, and we need more women like you. Thank you.
Thank you, love.
But just going back to the idea of the new normal, as I might have mentioned before, the new research is showing that many more people are considering the environment when making decisions about what they're going to buy, considering brands that are making a positive impact in society. So that kind of circles back to the investment strategy that you have. In this post-COVID world, is it going to be profitable to be investing in these companies? Or do you think it's going to be profitable anyway, investing in these companies?
Look, what I found about the space is that most people misconceive doing social, environmentally good for, no profits at all. And the space is uncompetitive in that sense. And what I'm noting is that the more value-driven your company is, the more that you empower the local communities around that service or that product, you attract the greatest and brightest talent. I don't want to invest in a company that's only driven by fast growth, because as we see, fast growth is one of the reasons as to why our planet is at the state that it's in. It's all about like capitalistic gains, but at the cost of what? And what this pandemic has taught all of us, especially when we were all, earlier this year, when we were all at home during lockdown, is it made us reflect, and it made us think really hard as to why the world was in such a state. What kind of society values exhaustion as a badge of honor? Because leading up to the point of the lockdown, being in the music industry, you are constantly working in all sorts of odd hours. You're dealing with people who are cruel, who are vulture-like agents, for example, and they have no respect for your time, for your energy, and especially being a woman in this space, okay? Every single agency I'd walk into, they would always think that I was the intern. And there's nothing wrong about being an intern, but the fact that I'm standing there as the festival producer and not just because I'm a woman, just because I look young. And during lockdown, all of this came to me really, really hard. And I thought about it a lot. And maybe our normal wasn't that great after all. Why can't we just work together to create a better normal? Why is it that our most essential workers are the least paid?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
about it.
And I think this is going to be the point in time where people value their local communities, their local designers, their local musicians, the local artists, because so much was at stake. People are losing their livelihoods. And why would you support something that is an ocean away when you could support the musician who lives down the street? Why can't you support the local designer in your community who you know makes their clothes with love, who treats their supply chain with love? It makes a huge difference when you think about it that way, because people then think about their communities. And when you think about each other, then you think about the world around you. And even if us as individuals, we can't single-handedly change the world, but you can change how a person feels about themselves. You can make an artist, you can make someone feel great about their work and feel incentivized and motivated to bring their art to the world.
Absolutely. And let's talk a bit about this kind of career pivot. I mean, obviously, Wonderfruit sadly is not going to happen this year. It's been postponed to next year. And obviously, your events company is taking it's on a bit of a pause. I think a lot of people in the event space, including myself, are having to take a break. But you've taken lockdown and you've become this sort of over Zoom. You've become a yogi or a yoga-preneur. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience and how you're now a yoga teacher in the space of 2-3 months?
I mean, in the Philippines, we had a very, very hard lockdown starting in March. We weren't allowed to leave our own homes unless it was to go to the grocery or unless it was a dire emergency. And I felt very, very sad. I felt very low because I couldn't see you. We couldn't see each other since Kilimanjaro, borders closed down. And, I was in my room one day and I kept thinking, will I continue to just feel sad and depressed about this, or can I do something about this? And I've practiced yoga for many, many years, but I never found a system that resonated with me. And it takes time. Everyone has their own path into yoga. There's no system that is right over the other. But I did find the system, and it brought me into awareness with my breath, awareness with my feelings, awareness into this idea of witness consciousness and how to process a lot of the news that I was consuming on a daily basis and how not to freak myself out. Because when you read the news and you can't leave your home, it gets to you. It almost becomes like this vicious cycle of, let's call it panic porn, where you're just like hyping and your other family members up about, where is COVID, like which places has the outbreaks. And I thought that was becoming very toxic. And yoga helped me process those feelings. It helped me process my anxiety because, similar to you, my events company is on hold because we can't do anything. The government hasn't even given us a timeline as to when to resume music-related events at all. So I figured, I needed a break from the music industry. I've been in it since I was 16. And this yoga practice called Awakening Yoga really spoke to me. It really resonated with the fibers of my own being. And through breath, through meditation, and through movement, I realized that I had this passion for anatomy and kinesiology. And similarly to my work in investing, I realized that the more that you practice, the more that you do the work on yourself, the better person that you become in serving others around you. Because in order to make sense of the world around us, and I know that a lot of people are feeling helpless. They're feeling hopeless in this time, especially with news of the wildfires in the US, the wildfires in Australia, in the Amazon. And people are experiencing this very deep, very, very paralyzing feeling of eco anxiety and eco grief. And what I realize is the best remedy for that grief, for that anxiety, and it's completely valid, is through action. If you think that your actions won't make a difference, there's someone out there in need for your help. So you can donate to a cause that provides COVID relief. You could donate to a national park in Africa that has been ravaged by poaching and needs to support their rangers and to combat poaching. There's so many different ways that you can feel better, and all of those ways is through helping other people. And there's so much out there other than yourself, essentially.
Amazing. Yeah, and absolutely. Taking action is probably the biggest service that you can do. It may not change the world and it may not, make the headlines, but just taking that action is very important. And it's a way of fighting back against the tidal wave of negativity that we face in media. So, yeah, absolutely. How has yoga sort of changed you as an investor, do you think? Do you think it's only going to make you more aligned to this kind of conscious capitalism or ethical capitalism?
Absolutely, because the more that you practice, and it really is not just a physical practice. What makes yoga different from fitness disciplines is the philosophy, the ritualistic traditions surrounding it, and the intention. And what's important in investing, and there's no book on how to invest. The only way you're going to learn how to invest is by investing. I didn't go to school for business. I studied communications, and I'm still learning on the fly. And what the commonality between yoga and investing is the intention. What is the intention of this brand? What is the intention of the stakeholders? What is the intention of the founders? How can we all work together to build value and to create a better normal altogether? Because I like to think in one of my heroes is an investor named Naval Ravikant. And one thing he said on Shane Parrish's podcast called The Knowledge Project, which, by the way, is a great podcast. Everyone should subscribe to The Knowledge Project. And he said that he only plays long-term games with long-term people. And this is not like mind games, manipulated games. This is the idea that you want to be able to sit down with a business partner or a founder of a company 30 years from now with coffee. And likewise, you want to be around people that you want in your life forever. You don't need to be distracted by all this noise. And it's all noise, everything. It's really about building your interpersonal relationships, the values. It all always comes down to the values.
Fantastic. And what advice, taking those principles to heart, like if you're a budding entrepreneur out there, what advice would you give to someone now? If someone who's listening wanted to start their own business, especially as a young female, what advice would you give them?
I would advise to be more concerned about the people suffering from the problem than passionate about the solution. Because when you're always practicing empathy in that sense, there's always going to be a new problem presented. And if for 1 second you lose touch with your customer, then you're lost. You always have to think about your true customer. And it's funny, I know you and I watched The Social Dilemma the other night, and
Worth watching.
Yeah, and it's on Netflix. But what was interesting, and I was talking about this with my cousin Gabby earlier, is that aside from the illegal drug trade, the only business and the only industry that views their customers and describes them as users is the tech industry. That says a lot. That says a lot. And I know you and I always have conversations about, science and consciousness. Are like, how could we like put like the humanistic aspect in numbers and data, so that we're more than just a number in data collection. And when I see platforms, and the irony is we're doing this on Facebook, on Instagram, but the way that I see such a powerful company literally tear the world and tear democracies around the world apart. I mean, look at us here in the Philippines. Prime example as to what was happening to Maria Ressa. For goodness sakes, it's crazy that why do we have to be at the grips of these tech companies who only look at us as users?
Yeah.
And I don't want to like support any like business who views their customers as users. Could you hear the guinea pigs?
Queek in the background. Here's one. We've been the proud owners of 2 guinea pigs.
Yeah, they're so cute and always hungry.
And just to remind everyone, you actually feed them a lot of produce from your one of your companies, right?
Right. Shameless self-promotion, but it's a company called Future Fresh. I can hear them squeaking. And what I really love about Future Fresh is, again, when I look at it in the overall health of the planet, you have to look at it from the overall health of the people living on the planet. And our food systems around the world, the fact that 75% of the food we consume are genetically modified, containing GMOs, containing pesticides. The food industry is destroying our pollinators. This is a crazy fact to digest, because for all of you who love your almond milk, you gotta listen to this, because every single almond in the whole world has been pollinated by a bee. And majority of the different bee species in North America are going extinct because of the pesticides that are being sprayed on the crops in America. And of course, industrial farming, from an ethical and from an environmental standpoint, is horrific. It's horrific. The way that you see how these farms are churning out chickens that are like bigger than geese. It's horrible. And when you look at it from that perspective, people are getting more sick. People are developing early onset Alzheimer's, from the ages of 40, from the ages of 50. People are getting diabetes. And now there's a big campaign that's being funded by the Coca-Cola Group to pay off influencers. And I mean, I saw a podiatrist on Instagram last night, a foot doctor, talking about how sugary soda doesn't cause diabetes. I mean, the fact that Coca-Cola is paying these ridiculous people on Instagram to peddle out these lies, when diabetes is rising everywhere in the world. It's rising here in Asia as well. In Japan, for example, Alzheimer's is increasing because of the new rules of importing American junk food, essentially. And what Future Fresh is doing with their business is they've created a hydroponic farming system that is based in an urban center such as Manila, and they grow all of the produce that is typically flown in from overseas. There's a lot of issues with that principle, because by the time you purchase it, A, it's expensive, B, 2 days after, it's already bruised up, and you can't even eat it. And the fact that Future Fresh are only growing produce that are not being grown by local farmers in the Philippines. So they're not competing with the local farmers. What they want to do is they want to destroy the demand for overseas produce. Because again, like how much carbon is being wasted to eat like a plant that's flown in from California, right? Or from Italy. When you can grow these here, and especially with the weather being so unpredictable, typhoons are destroying farmlands everywhere, that I think that systems like hydroponic farming are really going to be prominent within the next few years, especially when food security is going to be a massive issue.
And the guinea pigs love it. They love it.
The guinea pigs love it. Do you guys want to see them? They're so funny. Babies! So I'm going to feed them our kale and our spinach. Where are they?
There we go. There's Abby.
That's Eb. Flo, come here.
Hydroponics from Future Fresh, one of Katrina's companies that she's invested in. So there you go. The proof is in the lettuce.
Yeah, I mean, there's no pesticides sprayed on it, so it's completely safe for your furry friends if you are based in Manila.
Well, thank you, Abby. Great demonstration. Hi, Vavs Martel.
Hi, Nikki. Yeah, they're really quite something.
Oh, they're cute.
It's funny how getting a pet in quarantine really makes a massive, massive difference. I mean, it's certainly amazing for your mental health, let me just say.
Well, that's awesome. We got to see Abby and Flo, so thanks for that, Pookie. And just to a nice, thank you, Adam.
You should get one, Adam. They're really fun.
Yeah, really. Just bringing this to sort of wrapping it up, talking about sustainability versus regeneration and why there's an important difference here. We talk a lot about sustainability, but actually, if you invest in regeneration, the benefits are manifold, or exponential. So, do you want to talk a bit about that? All right, I got my benefits.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation needs to shift from, sustainability, because sustainability it applies to so many different things, and it really only means maintaining something, whereas regeneration is giving back to an ecosystem that thrives on you giving it something to thrive on. For instance, regenerative farming over industrial farming, where you let the cows, you let the pigs, you let the chickens roam free in the pasture, and what happens when that pig walks over a flower, then that flower goes and like the seeds go everywhere. And look, honestly, animals that are raised in a regenerative farm, not only is the meat much better for you in terms of like there's no antibiotics pumped in it, but the animals live a good life. They live a happy, happy life. And the topsoil, for example, topsoil sadly is considered a non-renewable resource. And the problem is that scientists estimate that the topsoil will run out of farmable topsoil by 2065. And that's really scary. And what destroys topsoil, again, are these bloody pesticides and all the toxics that we're polluting our farmland with. We're polluting the land with all this toxic poison, and topsoil sequesters carbon. Like, they sequester more carbon than trees. And what I really believe in, and what I would love to see happening in the future is hemp. And hemp is one of the most incredible ancient crops that we have today that we are not taking advantage of. We need to give up this whole concept of reefer syndrome, okay? And stop calling it marijuana, because marijuana is a term that was invented by the Hearst Group when they wanted to promote their timber business, their wood business, to destroy the hemp business, the hemp industry. And marijuana it's a derogatory term. It was meant to paint people of color to be criminals. So let's drop the whole concept of marijuana, of reefer syndrome, and look at the potential of this amazing plant. Because when we plant hemp, it sequesters more carbon than an entire forest. It is a much more sustainable and a much more regenerative. You have 2-in-1, regenerative fabric and a stronger fabric than conventional cotton. It has been proven. I mean, it's amazing how many companies are using hemp for construction material. Like in the UK, there are many architectural firms that are building homes made out of hemp bricks. And to me, I think this is the future. And we need to, as we see the most amazing therapeutic benefits coming from this plant, besides treating high levels of anxiety, it treats children who suffer through seizures. And we need to give up this strange taboo around it, especially in areas like Southeast Asia, where there's a death penalty that meets you for something such as hemp or cannabis. And a reason for why these drug laws are in place around the world is because, sadly, is that the US is the key authoritative figure in creating these drug laws that have been in place since the 1960s. We need to look at what we have already in our backyards. We need to explore the many different applications in hemp, because as we're crying out about economic recession, there are no jobs in the market, and there are none. But if we explore hemp and all the different possibilities with hemp, you get more jobs. It creates a better environment in terms of carbon sequestering, in terms of carbon absorption, and in terms of empowering farmers.
Absolutely. You touch upon this point that natural climate solutions are far cheaper than creating these wacky technological solutions. And, roughly 3.2 billion people are currently impacted by degradation of land. Now, if we invest, every $1 invested in restoration will generate an average of 10% on that investment. So, that's another big topic. But the solutions are out there. Nature already has the solutions. Hemp, mycelium, looking after the topsoil to sequester the carbon. So we really need to just look to the solutions that nature has engineered over billions of years and help that reactivate or regenerate. Regeneration is key. So I'm glad.
Biomimicry. It's all about biomimicry.
So Ted asked quickly, actually, on that point. Blood, Guts, Glory mentioned the documentary Need to Grow, which has just come out, as narrated by Woody Harrelson, and it talks precisely about the topsoil issue and then how topsoil is an essential to our food chain, and yet we're using a disposable resource, and we have to do something about it very quickly. And then. And thank you for the question. How do we get Future Fresh in places like Hong Kong? See, we're plugging your business here on Change.
Well, I'm not sure if rents in Hong Kong are going to be friendly for a container, but we are definitely open. I mean, definitely looking into expanding and deploying this kind of technology around especially in Southeast Asia, for sure. It's definitely in the pipeline.
Right. Well, sadly, we're running out of time, but I think, we've covered Kilimanjaro. We've talked about regenerative capitalism, sustainable ventures. I think you're really a inspiration especially for young women who are dated by males.
Thanks, my love.
it's really great that you have you spend some time on this channel to share with it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, my love.
Thank you, and thank you. Hi, Minjay, and thank you to.
Minjay.
So, just to finish off, then, what would you say is for someone who's looking to maybe change their career at this sort of later stage in their life because of the COVID pandemic, because of the recessions they're going to hit? What would you say is the best advice to them? Because a lot of people are fearful right now for the future.
I've read somewhere very recently about society celebrate. I mean, like, we need to like just drop all of these 40 under 40, 30 under 30, 5 under 5. Because if you think about it,
I can't 40 under, that's really sad.
But basically, so society loves to put these timelines and time frames, but we all know they're not realistic and they don't exist, and they should not even be brought into the collective consciousness, because you can do anything at any age. It only takes your ability to be curious, your ability and your desire to take risks, because Alan Rickman got his first acting job when he was 41 or something like that. It's never too late to turn over a new leaf. And we always have to look at ourselves, and even if you don't live near the oceans or you've never seen the ocean in your life, we are still the ocean, since our bodies are made out of water as well. And when we are kinder to ourselves in that way, kinder in the sense that giving ourselves the rest that we need, giving ourselves the ability to play, the ability to stay curious, the ability to want to learn a new skill. It's okay to want to finish your undergrad degree when you're 60, as long as you are curious and you're fulfilling that childlike desire to learn. Because there's so many. One thing that's amazing about this world today is that there's so many resources out there, and there's so many free content, and there's so many great content. And I mean, for great content, you pay for great content, because if you want content creators to make that kind of high quality, then it's understandable to pay for it. But what's amazing is that it's accessible through a click away. I got my yoga teacher certification online, and this is the first year that Yoga Alliance is allowing for that to happen. And to me, that's crazy. Like, I've connected with all of my classmates from all around the world. We feel very connected to each other, yet we have not met each other in person, and we've been very vulnerable with each other. And it's just things that are so exciting about the times that we live in. Even if the times that we live in may seem scary, there's always something new to learn. You just have to have that childlike curiosity to keep exploring and keep playing.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the wise words. Namaste. Katrina.
Thanks, my love.
Time, but thank you everyone for joining. Join us next week at the same time for another interview with an exciting change maker who we yet to announce. But if you want to re-watch this, we'll put it on YouTube and on IGTV so you can watch it at your leisure later on. Thank you everyone for your support and questions. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Katrina will be most happy to answer you directly on her IG messaging, or we'll put it on Project Sea Change later.
And there's a new documentary coming out this week called Kiss the Ground. It's all about topsoil. It's all about how the solution to combat the climate crisis is literally underneath our feet. That's the soil. So go watch it. I think it comes out tomorrow or the day after, but Kiss the Ground organization is unbelievable. They're so inspiring. And if you're looking for another inspiring documentary, go watch My Octopus Teacher, because if you don't love animals and care for wild animals, this documentary is going to make you.
Yeah, My Octopus Teacher is a must. You will never look at nature, and you'll never eat another octopus again if you eat octopus. Yeah. Again, thanks so much. Thank you, Life Hub Well Care, for your comments. We'll be back next week. and we'll see you soon. See ya.
Bye, thanks, love.
Thanks
Bye,
so much.
Cookie.
Bye.